The once high and mighty Golden Circle heiress by Susu became an unresponsive vegetable after a car accident. I ruined my family to steal her out of the morgue and hid her in a basement at -10 degrees. On New Year's Eve the heating went out and her body temperature dropped to freezing. To save her I stripped off my clothes and held her tight in my arms. Just when I thought we were going to freeze to death together, the body that had been stiff for 3 years suddenly trembled. Her icy fingers wrote 2 characters on my back: run. At -15 degrees, someone cut the basement's power. In the dark I felt by Susu's face it was like touching a piece of raw meat just taken out of the freezer. Susu. I slapped her face, no response. I panicked, grabbed the broken thermometer from the table and wedged it into her armpit. Using the last bit of battery on my phone I saw the mercury stuck stubbornly at 34 degrees. Hypothermia. The doctor had warned that for a patient in her severe catatonic vegetative state, once hypothermia sets in the heart can stop at any moment. I grabbed the only 2 tattered quilts on the bed and wrapped them around her, to no avail. She was barely breathing, her lips a corpse-like blue. Either way, she was dead. I bit my lip, tore off my sweater and coat, threw back the covers and crawled in. The instant our skin touched, I shivered. She was practically an ice sculpture. I couldn't think of anything else. I clamped my arms around her waist, wedged her into my chest, and pressed my burning ribs against her heart. By Susu, you can't die. I gritted my teeth into her ear. I took out 3 million in usury loans to steal you out. If you dare die, I'll hunt you every day and night even as a ghost. 1 second, 2 seconds. The body in my arms remained rigid. Desperate, I closed my eyes, my tears smashed into the hollow of her neck and froze into ice shards. Suddenly, a faint sensation brushed my back. I snapped my eyes open. A hand, bony, wasted, unused for 3 years, was gripping the fabric of my shirt at the back. I froze, not daring to breathe hard. Then a warm drop slid down my neck. I lowered my head and, in the weak snowlight coming through the window, met a pair of eyes. Susu's eyes were open, tears streaming wildly from their corners. She looked at me. There was no vacant vegetative stare, only wrenching pain and lucidity. She had been alert all along. For 3 years she had been trapped in that living dead shell, hearing and seeing everything outside. Susu. My voice trembled beyond recognition as I reached out to touch her face. She, however, turned her head away with all her strength to avoid my hand. The next second, the fingers gripping my shirt began to move. A horizontal stroke, a vertical stroke, a slanted stroke. She was writing on my back. Her movements were extremely slow. After each stroke she had to gasp for a long time. Go away. After finishing those 2 characters, her hand slammed heavily onto the bedboard and could not be lifted again. She stared at me intently, her eyes rimmed red, her gaze full of plea. I suddenly realized that the power cut hadn't been an accident. It had been deliberately cut. Someone had come looking. Bang! A loud crash came from overhead as the iron door to the basement was kicked hard, sending dust from the ceiling fluttering down. Lin Fan, get out here. I know you hid that bitch in there. It was Bai Susu's own younger brother, Baiyu. My blood dropped to ice in an instant. 3 years ago when Bai Susu had the car accident, it was Baiyu who set it up. To seize control of the Bai family, he bribed the doctors to declare Bai Susu brain dead and planned to send her straight to the crematorium. It was me, a lowly driver not even worthy to tie her shoes, who grabbed a can of gasoline and burst into the hospital, forcing them to hand her over to me. Bang! Bang! The banging on the door grew louder, the chains on the iron gate emitting a groan of unbearable strain. Bai Susu breathed rapidly, making a wheezing sound like a broken accordion from her throat. She pounded the bed slats with her head, signaling me to run. Tears stung my eyes. I pressed her head down and pulled her back into my arms. I'm not leaving. I snatched the quilt and wrapped her up tightly. I didn't leave 3 years ago, and I won't leave today. I fumbled under the pillow and found a rusted boning knife, gripping it tightly in my hand. Outside the door, Baiyu sneered coldly, not coming out, huh? Fine, pour the gasoline. Tonight's New Year's Eve, I'll send you 2 lovebirds to the sky to set off fireworks together. The acrid smell of gasoline seeped through the crack in the door, growing stronger and stronger. The pleading in Bai Susu's eyes turned into despair. She suddenly opened her mouth and bit down hard on her own tongue. She wanted to kill herself. She didn't want to drag me down with her. Crazy! I screamed, my eyes bloodshot, grabbing her chin and forcing my fingers into her mouth. Her sharp teeth instantly pierced my fingers. The metallic scent of blood spread between our lips and teeth. She bit down so hard, yet her tears flowed so fiercely. Don't be afraid. I wiped her tears away with my blood-stained hand, then leaned down and kissed her cold forehead. I told you, if we die together. Boom! With a tremendous crash, the iron door of the basement was finally broken open. Several blinding flashlight beams swept in at once, making it impossible for me to keep my eyes open. A few bodyguards in black suits rushed in and dragged me off the bed. I struggled desperately, brandishing my bone-cleaving knife, but was struck on the back of the head with a baton. Everything went black and I collapsed heavily onto the concrete floor. A pair of custom leather shoes stepped on my face. Baiyu crouched down and looked at me with disgust. A lowly dog like you dare touch my sister? He sneered and pressed his foot hard against my cheekbone. My face was covered in blood as I stared fixedly at Bai Susu on the bed. The bodyguards roughly threw back the covers. Bai Susu lay exposed to the cold air like a ragdoll. Her eyes were wide open, staring hard at Baiyu, her throat giving off ragged gasps. Oh, not quite dead yet? Baiyu stood up, walked to the bedside, and took a syringe from his pocket filled with a clear liquid. Potassium chloride injected, and the heart stops. The coroner won't find anything. Baiyu idly flicked the syringe. Sis, you've hogged the Bai family for so many years, it's time to make room for me. He grabbed Bai Susu's arm, the needle tip aimed at her vein. Beast! How dare you touch her? I roared like a madman, clamping my teeth hard on the ankle of the bodyguard stepping on me. The bodyguard screamed, delivering a kick to my ribs. Crack! The sound of a broken rib. I curled up in pain, spewing a mouthful of blood. Bayu glanced back at me and sneered, Lin Fan, do you know why I only came to find you today? He pulled a document from his pocket and threw it in my face. Beishi Group Equity Gratuitous Transfer Agreement. It took me a lot of effort over the past 3 years to forge her signature and fingerprint. Now that all the paperwork is done, her being alive is actually a liability. Bayu drove the needle through Bai Susu's skin. My eyes burned. I watched helplessly as that deadly liquid was about to be pushed into her veins. At that critical moment, Bai Susu, pinned to the bed, suddenly stopped struggling. Her eyes, which had been dulled by fear, sharpened and fixed deadly on Bayu. Then, to everyone's astonishment, this woman who had been paralyzed for 3 years and declared a severe, catatonic vegetable sat up straight on the bed. She snatched Bayu's wrist holding the syringe from behind. There was a crisp crack, and Bayu let out a scream like a slaughtered pig, my hand. Bayu's howl echoed through the cramped basement. His wrist had been brutally broken, the syringe fell to the floor and shattered. The bodyguard stood there stunned, staring at Bai Susu on the bed as if she were a monster. I froze too, forgetting even the searing pain in my ribs. Bai Susu didn't look at anyone. She turned her head slowly and stiffly, her gaze landing on my blood-smeared face. In that moment I saw the ice in her eyes melt away and turn into overwhelming murderous intent and pain. She pulled out the indwelling needle still bleeding from the back of her hand and staggered to her feet. Having not walked for 3 years, her legs were as thin as dead branches. The moment her feet hit the ground she pitched forward. I don't know where the strength came from. I suddenly pushed away the bodyguards on me and lunged forward to catch her. She fell into my arms very light, like a feather. Susu. I held her tightly, my voice hoarse and out of tune. She leaned on my shoulder, breathing heavily. Then she raised the hand that had just broken Bayu's wrist and gently touched the blood on my face. Lin Fan. She spoke, her voice hoarse and rough, like sandpaper rubbing glass, yet it reached everyone's ears clearly, you're really silly. Tears burst from my eyes in an instant. 3 years every day I talked to her alone, and I finally received this reply. Sister, you didn't. Bayu covered his severed wrist, stumbling backward, his face as pale as paper. Bai Susu slowly turned around. She leaned against my chest, her gaze as cold as a demon crawled out of hell. Bayu, she stared at her own younger brother, speaking each word deliberately, the fact that the car accident didn't kill me was the biggest mistake of your life. Get them! Kill them! Kill them! Bayu was completely panicked, screaming hysterically as he lunged at the bodyguards. The 4 bodyguards woke as if from a dream, pulled out collapsible batons, and lunged at us. I instinctively tried to shield Bai Susu behind me, but she suddenly reached out and snatched the rusty boning knife from my hand. The next second, like a tigress who had been lying in wait, she sprang forward, her movements awkward but ruthlessly fierce. Shhhh. The blade plunged precisely into the thigh of the lead bodyguard. He screamed and fell. Bai Susu used his momentum to pull the knife out and, with the butt of the blade, slammed it hard into another bodyguard's temple. In just a few seconds, all 4 strong bodyguards lay on the floor in a pool of blood, wailing. Bai Susu stood where she was, her chest heaving violently, her strength had been completely spent, and the hand that held the knife trembled like a sieve. Yet she still stared fixedly at Bayu, who was cowering trembling in the corner. Why you, don't come near. Bayu's crotch was soaked, and he scrambled and rolled toward the door to hide. Bai Susu didn't pursue him. She suddenly turned, threw away the knife, and stumbled as she lunged at me. Lin Fan, run. She grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. The drug only lasts 10 minutes. I was stunned. The drug? I looked at her in shock. Bai Susu's complexion had shifted from the previous sickly pallor to a strange flush, her pupils began to dilate and her body convulsed uncontrollably. What drug? Susu, what's wrong? I pulled her into my arms, my heart falling to the pit of my stomach. Adrenaline, I just bit open the capsule hidden under my tongue. She clutched my collar so hard her nails almost dug into my flesh, each word accompanied by heavy gasps. He still has people outside. A buzzing went through my head. 3 years ago, before her car accident, she was the most decisive ruler of the Bai Corporation. How could she have no contingency? She turned herself into a vegetable, even hiding a drug under her tongue that could trigger latent potential, all just to buy a sliver of hope in a desperate moment. And she hadn't used it for these 3 years because she knew that once she did, she'd be drawing on her last bit of life. Today, she used it to save me. Don't talk. I'm taking you out. I clenched my teeth against the searing pain from my broken ribs and hoisted her onto my back. So light it broke my heart. Stepping over a floor slick with blood and the groans of bodyguards, I charged out of the basement. On New Year's Eve the streets were thick with falling snow, and fireworks bloomed brilliant in the distant sky. I ran through ankle-deep snow with Bai Susu on my back. The biting wind cut my face like knives, but I only felt heat growing behind me. Bai Susu's body temperature was climbing rapidly. That was a sign of the drug rebounding. Lin Fan. She lay across my back, her voice so weak it was nearly swallowed by the wind and snow. I'm here, Susu, don't fall asleep. We're going to the hospital, we're almost there. I gritted my teeth, tears mixed with blood streaming down. Don't go to the hospital, her cold fingers gently brushed my cheek. The Bai family will find us. Then where do we go? Anywhere will do, as long as you survive. I was on the verge of collapse. Go see the river. I stopped dead, bit down hard enough to taste blood, hoisted her up a bit, and sprinted toward the bridge 2 kilometers away spanning the river. The snow fell harder and harder, striking my face like knives. The person on my back was a furnace, scalding hot heat bought by overdrawing life. The river wind, full of ice shards, drove into my throat. I coughed up a mouthful of bloody foam and finally climbed the river embankment. The New Year's Eve bells rang, fireworks exploded across the sky, multicolored lights illuminating Bai Susu's ghastly pale face. She leaned against me, eyes half open, half closed. Susu, look at the fireworks. I wiped the blood from her face, my voice trembling badly. She pulled an ugly smile, her fingers fumbling to grab the hem of my clothes. Lin Fan, she gasped, each word tinged with the taste of blood. 3 years ago, someone tampered with the car, the brakes failed. I froze, my heart clenched as if by an invisible hand. I noticed it a long time ago. She began coughing, black blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. Then why didn't you tell me? My eyes burned red, a beast-like growl rumbling in my throat. Because you were in the passenger seat. She stared into my eyes. Before we hit the guardrail, I turned the wheel and steered the driver's seat toward it. Boom! Something in my head completely exploded. In the car accident 3 years ago, I walked away unscathed while she fell into a deep coma. I had always taken it as a cruel twist of fate. It turned out she traded her life for mine. Are you crazy? Why would you do this? I roared, tears breaking free. Fool, she lifted her hand and wiped away my tears. I owed you. You don't owe me. You don't owe me. I clung to her, wanting to press her into my bones and blood. She shook her head, her breathing grew ever more faint. She laboriously raised the trembling hand, her fingers groping at the collar, her nails tearing the skin of her neck. She gave a hard tug and the button popped off into the snow. She lowered her head, caught a red cord hidden against her body between her teeth, and yanked it outward. A blood-stained brass key fell out. The key spit into her palm and was shoved into my hand. Locker number 37, basement level 2, Zhangcheng train station. Inside is Bayou's money laundering ledger, and the trust fund I left for you. Take it and go as far away as you can. I slammed the key into the snow. I don't want money, I only want you to live. I tore open her clothes like a madman, trying to use the cold wind to cool her down. It did no good, her skin was alarmingly hot, her pulse racing as if it would leap from her chest. Cough, cough. She began to cough violently, spitting large mouthfuls of black blood onto the snow, horrifying to behold. Listen, she said, gripping my wrist so hard her nails dug into my flesh, stay alive, and make sure Bayou goes to hell. Suddenly, a blinding high beam pierced the night, several black SUVs charged up the river embankment like beasts, and the screech of brakes tore through the air. Woof, 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 the ferocious dogs barked, mixed with the chaos of hurried footsteps drawing closer. Follow the blood trail, they can't have gone far. Bayou's frantic voice came through. Catch that bitch, I want to see her corpse. Goose flesh rose all over me, I grabbed the deboning knife from the ground. Susu, don't be afraid. I shielded her behind me. I'll kill them. I gritted my teeth, my eyes full of murderous intent. Even if I died, I would take Bayou down with me. Susu suddenly convulsed violently, using her last strength she slammed into my back. Caught off guard, my foot slipped and I tumbled down the embankment. Below was an abandoned sewage culvert overrun with weeds and reeking of filth. I crashed into the muck, a piercing pain shot from my broken ribs. I struggled to climb up as Susu's heart-wrenching cough sounded above me. She had deliberately made noise. They're over there. Quick! The beam of a flashlight instantly focused on the edge of the embankment. Don't come over. Susu's voice was filled with despair, she was drawing their attention. Susu! I felt my eyes brim with blood. I was about to shout when a piece of mud-stained cloth was shoved into my mouth. It was my own hand. I bit down hard on the back of my hand, swallowing that roar back into my gut. I couldn't make a sound. If I did, she'd die for nothing. I lay in the fetid muck, peering through gaps in the weeds, staring fixedly upward. A few bodyguards rushed over. Bayou kicked Susu in the stomach. Run! You fucking keep running! Bayou's face was savage. Susu rolled in the snow like a rag doll, without making a single cry. She lay quietly in the snow, her eyes fixed on the direction of the tunnel. She was watching me. In that gaze there was affection and resignation. That one is swollen too? Bayou grabbed her hair and hauled her up. Susu spat a mouthful of blood that sprayed onto Bayou's face. Jumped into the river, she laughed, the laugh bitter and sharp. Damn! Bayou wiped the blood from his face and backhanded her. Search her. Alive we want to see her, dead we want to see the body. Several bodyguards swept flashlights along the riverbank, the beams cutting across the edge of the dark channel several times. I held my breath, pressing my body hard into the muck. Filthy water flooded my mouth, fishy and foul. I swallowed it down, swallowing it along with blood and tears. Boss, the current's too strong. She was probably swept away already, one bodyguard reported. Bayou spat. Lucky for him. Bitch, take her away. He tossed Susu to the bodyguards like trash. Find somewhere no one's around and bury her. The bodyguards dragged Susu by one leg like a sack, leaving a long trail of blood in the snow. Susu made no struggle, her arms hung limply on the ground, utterly lifeless. I watched with wide eyes as they shoved her into the trunk and the SUV drove off. Fireworks still bloomed across the sky, the river wind as biting as ever. I lay in the dark passage, trembling all over, not from the cold, but from hatred. I released the hand I had bitten until it bled, opened my palm, and the brass key stained with blood was deeply embedded in the flesh. I pulled the key out, clenched it until my knuckles whitened, and blood dripped from between my fingers into the mud. Bayou. I mouthed the name, grinding each syllable between my teeth. I braced myself against the moss-covered wall and slowly stood up, broken ribs rubbed against flesh, pain searing to the bone. I didn't stop, climbing out of the tunnel step by step. The blood stains on the snow were already being covered by the wind and snow. I hid the key close to my body and picked up the bone-cleaving knife from the ground. Its blade reflected the neon lights on the opposite bank. I turned and walked into the boundless darkness. The wind and snow grew fiercer, a bone-cutting chill shooting from my solace to the crown of my head. I took off the only shirt I had left and tore it into strips, winding them tightly around my broken ribs. With each wrap the pain doubled, cold sweat mixed with river water streaming down. I bit the spine of the bone-cleaving knife to keep from making a sound. After binding the wound, I spat out the knife. A gust of cold wind cracked the scab on my chest. I paid it no mind. My mind held only the image of Bai Susu being dragged away. The trail of blood pulled through the snow. A brand seared onto my retinas. Zhangcheng Railway Station, basement level 2, locker number 37. Bai Susu's weak voice echoed in my ear. I clenched the brass key in my pocket, the metal's edges cut into my palm. This was the chip she had bought with her life. I trudged through ankle-deep snow, walking along the shadow of the river embankment. I couldn't take the main road. Baiju's people were surely still patrolling nearby. Sirens sounded in the distance on New Year's Eve in Zhangcheng. Clamor and sin were intertwined. I moved like a rat crawling in a gutter, avoiding every surveillance camera. 3 hours later, I stood in an unfinished building opposite Zhangcheng Railway Station. Dawn was approaching. The station's electronic clock flashed red numbers, 4:30 a.m. On the square, a few scattered homeless people shivered wrapped in tattered blankets. I leaned against a concrete pillar. Gasping blood loss made my vision swim in spots. I scooped up a handful of dirty snow from the ground and shoved it into my mouth. The icy, bone-chilling meltwater slid down my throat, jolting nerves that were on the verge of numbness. I stared at the station entrance. Several black sedans were parked at the edge of the square. Someone inside, smoking. The glow of the cigarette flaring and fading was conspicuously bright in the night. Baiju's people. They moved fast. When Bai Susu handed me the key, Baiyu must have heard the commotion. He guessed Bai Susu had left a contingency and directly sent people to seal off the station. I touched the strip of cloth at my ribs. It was already soaked through with blood. Forcing my way in would be a dead end. I closed my eyes and forced myself to stay calm. Bai Susu wouldn't hide something so important at the train station by accident. Basement level 2, that's the oldest area of Zhangcheng train station, connected to the abandoned underground air raid shelters. I opened my eyes and fixed my gaze on a vent on the side of the station. Back when I was still a low-level thug years ago, I used to fight for turf in that area. That vent led straight into the storage room on basement level 2. I slid the bone-cleaving knife into the back of my waist, climbed over the crumbling building's wall, and moved along the greenbelt like a shadow. The snow had stopped. The drifts creaked crunch, crunch underfoot. I slowed my steps, every one taken with my heart in my mouth. 10 meters from the vent, 2 men in black suits were relieving themselves beside it. Christ, it's New Year's, leaving us brothers to drink the northwest wind. Complain a little less, the boss has spoken. Not a single fly is allowed in. That kid was badly hurt. He probably died in some corner long ago. I hid behind a trash can, gripping the knife handle. The two pulled up their pants and turned to leave. At once, I drove my legs like a cheetah and lunged out. My left hand clapped over the mouth of the one walking behind. My right hand reversed to hold the bone-cleaving knife. SSSHT. The blade plunged precisely into the hollow of his back without making a sound. The man in front sensed something was wrong and was about to turn when I yanked the knife out and kicked the corpse at the knee. The body pitched forward and slammed into the man ahead. The two of them tumbled together. I mounted him, pinning his throat with my knee, the knife tip pressed against his eyeball. Make a sound and you'll die. I lowered my voice, my eyes devoid of any warmth of the living. The man trembled all over, nodding frantically. Where did you take Bai Susu? I forced my wrist, the tip of the knife piercing his eyelid, blood flowing into his eye. I don't know, the boss took her away personally. His voice shook like sifted chaff. Where did he take her? I increased the pressure. West, the abandoned chemical plant in the western suburbs. The boss said he'd handle it personally. I drew in a cold breath. The western suburbs chemical plant, that's where Baiyu specially sent people to do the dirty work. Bai Susu being left there meant slim chances of survival. Big brother, have mercy, the man begged. I expressionlessly drew my knife and sliced his carotid. Blood gushed out, splattering my face. I stood up, wiped the blood from my face, and dragged the two corpses into the shadow behind the dumpster. I removed the louvers from the ventilation shaft and crawled inside. The pipe smelled of dust and rat droppings. I alternated force between my elbows and knees, crawling forward through the narrow conduit. My broken ribs scraped against the sheet metal, the pain making cold sweat break out. I gritted my teeth and endured it. I don't know how long I crawled before a faint light appeared below. I looked down through the grate. It was the storage room on B2, empty. I kicked the grate open and jumped down. The instant I landed, my legs buckled and I sank to my knees. I braced myself against the wall and stood, then pushed open the storage room door. B2 was filled with rows of worn lockers, the lights dim and the air damp. I followed the numbers. 25, 26, 37, found it. The locker door was covered in rust. I took out the blood-stained brass key, my hand shaking as I tried to align it with the keyhole. Lin Fan, survive. Bai Susu's voice rang in my ear again. I took a deep breath and steadied my wrist. Click, the lock opened. I pulled the door open and found a black waterproof bag inside. I unzipped it. On top was a thick file, White Group Abnormal Fund Flows Report and Evidence of Money Laundering. Each page bore the company seal and was signed with Baiyu's name. The evidence was ironclad. Under the document was a black bank card, and beneath the card was a note. The handwriting was delicate. Bai Susu's note, the password is your birthday. Leave Zhang City, forget me. I pinched that note, my knuckles cracked. Forget? How can I forget? She pulled me out of the mire, gave me back my dignity as a person, and to save me, turned herself into a vegetable. Now she's even willing to give up her life, just to pave a way for me to live. I shoved the note into my mouth and swallowed. I slung the waterproof bag over my shoulder. Baiyu, you want me to leave? In your dreams. I dug a rusty iron bar out of the junk room, weighed it in my hand, and turned toward the stairwell. West Suburb Chemical Plant, here I come. Even if it's a mountain of blades and a sea of fire, I'll drag you down to hell with me. I pushed open the security door to B2. Dozens of people stood outside in the oppressive dark, all in black suits, holding machetes and steel pipes. Leading them was Bayou's confidant, Guangtachiang. He spat out the toothpick in his mouth and sneered, "Kid, the boss guessed right, you did come for the stuff. Hand over the bag, and we'll leave you intact." Guangtachiang wrapped the steel pipe in his hand, producing a grating metallic clang. I looked at them and slowly tore off the strips of cloth wrapped around me, my broken ribs exposed to the air. I raised the iron bar and pointed it at Guangtachiang. Blood on the blade was still dripping. "Stand in my way, and you die." That night at Zhangcheng railway station, the blood ran like a river. With the iron rod in my hand, I smashed Guangtachiang's teeth out of his mouth. Taking a dozen or so knife wounds, I smashed open the ventilation shaft on B2 and plunged headfirst into the roaring Yangtze. River water flooded my lungs. A jagged discarded rebar tore my left cheek. My left leg hit a bridge pier and suffered a comminuted fracture. I didn't die. The king of hell wouldn't take me. He left me here to collect lives. 3 years later, Zhangcheng CBD, the headquarters tower of the Bai Group. 100 meters up, wind howling. I tightened the safety rope, a glass scraper in my hand. Beneath me the abyss of a stream of cars. My left leg has a cheap steel plate. Every movement shoots pain through me. Half my face is covered with ugly, centipede-like scars. Now they call me Chu, a mute, crippled high-rise window cleaner. A faint electric hiss came through the earbuds. "Fan Ge, we found it." Zion Renhazi's voice came into my ear. Bayou's old dog of a remnant bribed a driver from the convoy they moved this afternoon. I wiped the fog off the glass. Route, time. I lowered my voice. 3 p.m., South City overpass entrance, lead car. Huzzy spoke rapidly. "Make sure they don't come back." I spat out a few words. "Understood, the brothers have already set the trap." Another voice cut into the earpiece. It was the informant Loguit Fan. "For the West City deal, Bayou's people want to intervene. Chop off the ringleader's hand and toss it at the door of the Bai family's elder." I ordered coldly. "Got it." The trust fund Susu left me 3 years ago. I hadn't touched a penny. It all turned into covered cash, poured into Jiangxin's underground market. Over 3 years, in the city's dark corners I built an intelligence network that covers the sky. I don't play the big boss. I don't touch business in the daylight. I only act as Bai Susu's shadow, clearing out every venomous snake hiding in the dark for her. Scraping the last patch of grime aside, the bulletproof glass in front of me went transparent. In the CEO's office, Bai Susu sat behind a wide mahogany desk in a perfectly tailored black haute couture suit, her short hair crisp. She had come back to life, not only returned, but with thunderous measures had purged the Bai family and become the iron-hearted queen who made Jiangxin's business circles quake. Yet I could see the bluish bruising under her eyes. I could see the tension along her spine. Several elder members of the Bai family sat opposite her, banging the table. Through the glass I couldn't hear them, but I read the furious-mouthed words of the balding old man. "Bai Susu, don't get too arrogant. The Bai family isn't yours alone." Bai Susu showed no expression. She picked up the teacup on the table and smashed it hard at the old man's feet, her lips barely moving. "Get out." The elders stormed out in a rage, slamming the door behind them. The office emptied. She leaned back in her chair, her shoulders instantly collapsing. She raised her hand and rubbed her brow hard, revealing an exhaustion she couldn't hide. I hung outside the window, reaching out with rough work gloves, tracing her outline through the cold bulletproof glass in the empty air. 3 years, more than 1,000 days and nights, clearly within arm's reach, yet separated by an uncrossable sea of people. This was the only way I could see her each day. At 2:50 p.m., Bai Susu's motorcade drove out of the underground garage. 3 black armored Maybachs glinted coldly in the blazing sun. I grabbed the main rope and rappelled quickly down the building's exterior, hovering at the height of the 3rd floor. The rat's voice in my ear suddenly spiked, a distorted scream. "Fan Ge, something's wrong. The traffic light system has been cut by hackers. That dump truck started early and is heading straight for the building's main entrance." I jerked my head down. A heavy dump truck loaded with I-beams, like a raging beast, ignored the barricades, flooring it toward the 2nd Maybach where Bai Susu was. "Susu." I felt my eyes go red with rage, a beastly growl tearing from my throat. It was too late. The bodyguard's car was jammed dead in the inner lane. Bang! A deafening crash. The dump truck slammed into the Maybach's front. The 2-ton armored car spun on the spot. The dump truck flipped under the impact, the steel cables binding the bed snapping, tons of I-beams pouring out like a torrential downpour. One of the thickest rebars, laden with terrifying kinetic force, came hurtling straight toward the Maybach's rear window. Without a half-second's hesitation, I yanked off the safety catch limiter, kicked hard against the building's glass exterior with both feet, and shot out like a fired cannonball, swinging from the main rope. The wind tore at my eardrums, gravity yanking at my insides. The rope 100 meters up traced a heart-stopping arc. I stared fixedly at the falling rebar, closer, ever closer. I let go of the scraper in my hand, spread my arms in midair, slammed my hips forward, and with that prosthetic leg fitted with a steel plate, I kicked hard at the 2nd floor protruding billboard. Using the violent reactive force, my body changed trajectory and smashed straight into that lethal I-beam. Slit. The teeth-grinding sound of blade into flesh. The sharp edge of the rebar instantly pierced my right shoulder. Flesh tore, my scapula shattered, and waves of agony engulfed me like a tsunami. I ground my molars to bits, wrapped my hands tightly around the rebar, and with every ounce of strength, using my bloodied body, forced its falling direction to change. When the I-beam scraped past the Maybach's rear window and crashed to the ground, sparks flew and the asphalt was pitted by the impact. The bulletproof glass gave a muffled thud, spiderwebbing with cracks. I lost my balance, slammed down onto the hood littered with glass shards, and tumbled toward the window. Blood gushed down my arm, instantly staining the car window glass red. The world seemed to stop at that moment. Inside the carriage, Bai Susu was being held down by 2 bodyguards. She pushed them away, lifted her head, and through the shattered bulletproof glass met my eyes. I wore a filthy mask, the exposed half of my face was covered with ugly scars, my hair plastered to my forehead by sweat and blood, but those eyes, she had been looking at them for 3 years. I saw her pupils suddenly contract, the once icy, implacable mask on her face shattered in an instant. Her whole body began to tremble violently, like a leaf in the autumn wind. She lunged at the window, palms pressed hard against the glass, fingertips tracing my bleeding shoulder through the cold pane as they shook. Tears fell at once. "Ms. Bai, danger. Don't go near the window," a bodyguard shouted as he tried to pull her back. She struggled desperately, eyes fixed on me, lips quivering as she mouthed 2 silent words, "Lin Fan." I was in so much pain I was about to faint, clenching my tongue hard. People were all around screaming, passers-by, onlookers holding up phones to film, and hidden white feather remnants planted among the crowd. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on this car, fixed on her. I couldn't let them recognize me. If they did, this useless person of mine would become her weak spot, a target for the vipers hiding in the dark to strike. Using my intact left hand to support myself on the ground, I struggled to get up, dragging the crippled left leg a step back, lowering my head and hunching my shoulders to fake the panic and abasement of a lowly cleaner. Bai Susu's hand froze on the glass, her eyes bloodshot. She understood my retreat, understood my restraint. Tears pooled in her eyes, but she bit her lip hard, forcing them back. She snapped her head away, forcing herself to look elsewhere, her spine straightening again as she restored the cold, ruthless visage of the white family ruler. "Drive," she said coldly, barely 2 words. "But, Boss Bai, that worker outside." The bodyguard hesitated. "I told you to drive. Run him over if you have to drive." The voice was shrill, with a hysterical finality. The Maybach's engine roared deafeningly, the tires scraping the ground violently, spewing acrid white smoke. The car lurched into reverse, skirting the strewn wreckage, and sped away. I stood amid the ruins, watching the taillights vanish around the corner. Drops of blood from my right shoulder fell on the asphalt, splashing dark red patterns. It hurt, but I breathed a sigh of relief. She understands me. To survive, we must act like strangers. The wail of sirens closed in from all directions. I clutched my shoulder, slipped into the panic-stricken crowd, tore off my blood-soaked work uniform, and ducked into the maze of back alleys. A cold, rat-like voice came through the earpiece. "Brother Fan, check it out, one of the truck drivers is Bayou's former henchman. He's stuck in the cab and not dead yet." I leaned against the damp brick wall, gasping for air. "Finish him off. Make the scene look like an accident caused by brake failure." "Understood. We'll make it clean." I hung up and, dragging my ruined body, walked step by step back to the urban village. Late at night, in the basement, the air was thick with the smell of mildew. I took off my shirt, bit down on a ragged towel, and poured high-concentration alcohol directly onto the through-and-through wound on my right shoulder. White froth bubbled, my muscles convulsed violently. I picked up needle and thread and sewed myself up in front of the mirror. The needle tip pierced the skin. I remembered that New Year's Eve 3 years ago when she shoved the keys into my hand and told me to leave. I remembered the B2 level of the train station, how I used an iron bar to smash a dozen people's bones. I almost died then too. If I hadn't kept thinking she was still waiting for me, I wouldn't have had the strength to jump into the river. Each stitch through flesh felt like torture. After the last stitch, I collapsed onto the broken wooden bed, staring at the yellowed ceiling, my mind filled with the image of her trembling eyes through the glass. 3 years had passed, she had suffered more than I had. She, alone, had fought her way out of the cannibalistic by family's clutches, and I couldn't even hold her. Suddenly, faint footsteps sounded outside the door, the light tap of high heels on concrete, very soft, very slow. I whipped myself up, grabbed the bone-cleaving knife from under the pillow, pressed it against the door, and held my breath. The footsteps stopped outside the door. No knocking, no pounding, an absolute, death-like silence. After a few seconds, the footsteps started again and gradually receded. I gripped the knife handle and slowly pulled open the rusted iron door. The corridor was empty, only the dim motion-activated lights flickering. Looking down, a folded white paper lay quietly beneath the door gap. I bent to pick up the note, and a familiar, crisp cedar scent washed over me. It was her scent, a scent I had remembered for 3 years, thought about for 3 years. My fingers trembling, I unfolded the paper. There were only 4 characters, the stroke sharp, yet showing tremor marks that penetrated the paper. "Don't die, wait for me." I clenched the note hard into my palm, the paper ball's edge cut through the skin of my hand. Through the headset came Rat's rapid breathing. "Brother Fan, something big's happened. Those remaining old bastards from Bio bribed the banquet inner hall supervisor. They got hold of a nerve toxin extinct on the black market, colorless and tasteless. A single drop is enough to stop the heart within 5 minutes, even forensics can't find the cause of death. They're planning to take Mr. Bai's life during tonight's toast." I snapped to my feet and ripped off the blood-stained bandage just sewn onto my right shoulder. "Where's the banquet?" I ground my molars, every word tasted of blood. "The Peninsula Hotel's top floor, maximum security. Not even a fly can get in." Rat's voice was tight. "Get me a waiter's outfit." I pulled the black suitcase from under the bed. "Fan Ge, you're crazy. The through-and-through wound on your right shoulder is still bleeding, that's asking to be killed. If she dies, what's the point of my living?" I cut off communications, pried open the suitcase latch, took out a lifelike human skin mask, and, in front of a shattered mirror, pressed it little by little onto that half-face covered in centipede scars. Tonight, nobody is touching her. The Peninsula Hotel, snow-blocked streets. I changed into a waiter's vest, one size too small, carried a silver tray, and ducked my head as I passed through the noisy back kitchen. The wound on my right shoulder had fully split open, warm blood ran down my spine, soaking the gauze beneath, the sticky mess maddening. I paid it no mind, staring fixedly at the slightly ajar golden carved double doors ahead. I pushed the door open, the dazzling crystal chandelier stung my eyes. The air was perfumed, hair and gown shimmered, toasts were exchanged. Bai Susu stood in the center of the hall in a wine-red couture gown, like a blood-colored rose blooming in the snow. She held a goblet and watched the surrounding fake smiles with cold eyes. Several elder members of the Bai family held their wine cups, surrounding her tightly. The leader, Director Zhao, smiled like an old fox, the wrinkles on his face bunching together. Susu, over the past 3 years you've carried the Bai family with decisive ruthlessness, your uncles have all noticed. Tonight this glass of wine, we uncles offer it to you, drink it, and past grievances will be wiped clean. From now on the Bai family will be under your command. I lowered the brim of my hat and pressed silently against the base of the wall, my gaze fixed on the venue manager standing behind Director Zhao. He was placing 2 glasses of champagne on a tray, his thumb twitched and a faint white powder fell into the left glass, dissolving instantly, vanishing without a trace. The bubbles still churned at the bottom of the glass, like the summons of death. Go, serve Mr. Bai his wine. The manager grabbed my arm and thrust me forward. I took the tray smoothly, steadied my stance, and walked step by step toward Bai Susu. 10 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps. She turned around, her eyes casually sweeping over me. I kept my head down, held my breath, not daring to reveal an ounce of emotion. Mr. Bai, please have a drink. I deliberately lowered my voice, hoarse like a torn bellows. Director Zhao smiled and raised his glass, cutting off Bai Susu's retreat. Come on, Susu, do your uncle a favor. Bai Susu showed no expression, extending a hand clad in black velvet gloves, her fingertips about to touch the rim of that poisoned glass. I suddenly lifted my head. Before anyone could react, I picked up the poisoned champagne with my left hand and swallowed it in one gulp. The icy liquid poured down my throat into my stomach, carrying the chill of death. I snatched the other, clean glass from the tray with my other hand and forced it into her hand. This one is clean. I looked into her eyes and uttered those 4 words. The entire hall fell silent. Chairman Zhao's smile froze instantly, the wineglass in his hand nearly slipped to the floor. Bai Susu stood rooted to the spot, her pupils suddenly constricting. She stared fixedly into my eyes, the same eyes she had been looking at for 3 years, and her red lips trembled violently. It felt as if my entrails had been poured into a pot of boiling iron. The poison erupted with brutal intensity, a tearing pain that severed my nerves in an instant. I let out a muffled groan and bit down hard on my tongue. A rusty metallic taste of blood exploded in my mouth. I staggered back a half step, evading the hand she reached out, turned and pushed through the nearby crowd, blending into the panicked waitstaff, retreating to the darkest corner of the hall. I slid down the cold Roman column and collapsed to the floor, utterly drained. My vision began to blur, cold sweat soaking my body. I clamped my mouth shut as the black poisonous blood streamed crazily through my fingers, dropping onto the pristine marble floor in a shocking sight. On the stage, Bai Susu suddenly smashed the wineglass in her hand, shards of glass flew everywhere. Do it, she barked, her voice as cold as ice. The main doors were kicked open with a crash. Dozens of black-clad, fully armed bodyguards stormed into the hall, the dark muzzles of their guns immediately trained on everyone present. Chairman Zhao was utterly thrown into panic, stumbling backward and toppling the champagne tower behind him. The shattering of glass rang through the hall. Susu, you've gone mad. What are you trying to do? Bai Susu sneered, stepping over the shards of glass to close in. Do what? Clean house. She raised her hand and slapped a thick file hard across Chairman Zhao's face, papers scattered all over the floor. Bribing the inner supervisors to poison and assassinate, siphoning off the company's core assets. Uncle Zhao, do you really think I'm the same comatose pawn you butchered 3 years ago? Chairman Zhao collapsed to the ground, his face ashen, his whole body trembling like a sieve of chaff. No, it's not me. It's the remnant white feather faction. They forced me. Take him down, chop off both hands and throw him into the river. Bai Susu said without any wasted words. The bodyguards pounced like wolves and tigers, dragging off the elders involved in the mutiny like dead dogs. Cries of agony echoed through the luxurious banquet hall. The whole room fell silent, no one daring to breathe. She had won, and the Bai family was completely cleaned. I leaned against a pillar, watching the radiant woman on the stage, forcing a grotesque smile at the corner of my mouth as I swallowed the last surge of black blood rising in my throat. The mission was done, I had to leave. Bai Susu stood on the stage, her gaze sweeping the crowd like a blade. Suddenly, her eyes froze and, cutting through the throng with pinpoint accuracy, landed on the corner where I was hiding. I clapped a hand over my mouth, black blood soaked through my fingers. The white waiter's shirt had been stained large patches of dark red, and the mask's edge, soaked with sweat, began to curl and peel away. Her complexion instantly went as pale as paper. Lin Fan! A scream, shrill to the point of agony, tore through the hall's deathly silence. She grabbed the wine-red skirt and, as if driven mad, bolted down from the stage. A heel snapped, so she kicked off her shoe and strode barefoot across the floor strewn with shattered glass, blood gushing from her feet, utterly unbothered. Stop her! I hissed into the tiny microphone hidden in my collar. Lao Zi and a few of his brothers burst out of the shadows, blocking her path with determination. President Bai, it's dangerous on the scene. You can't go through. Get out! All of you get out! She pushed at the bodyguards like an enraged lioness, tears bursting forth and ruining her perfect makeup. I propped myself against a Roman column and staggered to my feet. I couldn't let her see me like this, couldn't die in front of her. Crawling and staggering, I shoved through the side door and plunged into the dark fire escape. Lin Fan, come back to me! Her desperate cry came through the crack in the door. I bit my teeth hard, clutching my writhing stomach, and sprinted down the stairs, bursting out of the hotel entrance. A blizzard was falling over Zhongcheng, the cold wind, full of ice shards, sliced at my face like knives. I staggered along the deserted street, the toxin had fully entered my heart veins, and with every step I coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. The black stains left a long trail across the pristine snow. I didn't know where I was going. Subconsciously, I dragged my crippled left leg toward the riverside. The neon lights of the bridge flickered in the wind and snow. 3 years ago on New Year's Eve, she shoved that brass key into my hand and told me to leave. 3 years later, I returned this life to her, we were even. I collapsed to my knees in the snow with a thud, unable to take another step. The pain in my organs began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep cold. My vision sank into darkness, and all that remained in my ears was the howling wind. I fell into the drifts, curling into a ball. It was so cold, colder than that night in the basement when the heating broke. I closed my eyes and quietly waited for death to come. Suddenly, the wind stopped, and the snowflakes on my face vanished. A black umbrella opened over my head, shielding me from the blizzard. Immediately after, a pair of trembling hands, with a reckless force, gripped my cold body tightly. The crisp scent of snow-laden pine mixed with a strong metallic tang of blood hit my face. A scalding tear fell onto my eyelid. "I've got you." The hoarse, heavily sobbing voice sounded in my ear. "This time, even if you die, you have to die in my arms." The smell of disinfectant stabbed my nostrils, and my eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I forced my eyes open with all my strength. The blinding incandescent light made me dizzy. A sharp alarm from the heart monitor rang in my ears. The oxygen mask strapped tightly to my face, each breath felt like swallowing countless bloody blades. My organs seemed to be ground by a meat grinder, and the pain nerves had begun to numb. I turned my dry eyes. Through the blurry mist my vision gradually focused. A deathly pale face was pressed against my cheek. It was by Susu. She had shed the black suit she usually wore and was in a crumpled hospital gown, her feet wrapped in thick bandages, the wounds from stepping barefoot on broken glass, deep red blood seeping through the white gauze, a shocking sight. She leaned over the edge of the bed, gripping my only intact left hand with both hands, pressing the back of my hand to her cheek, crying like a child who had lost the whole world. Tears fell from her chin onto my wrist, burning hot. My fingers trembled slightly as I tried to wipe away her tears. She jerked her head up, tears swollen and eyes blazing with ecstatic light. "Lin Fan." She lunged at me, hands hanging in midair, wanting to embrace me but afraid of touching my wounds, so she traced my outline in the air. "Doctor! Somebody call a doctor. He's awake." She turned and shouted toward the door, her voice hoarse and broken, carrying the madness of a life snatched back. I clasped her fingertips with my other hand, icy and bone-chilling. "Don't shout." I pulled at my cracked lips, a veil of white fog gathered on the oxygen mask as faint breaths hissed out. She immediately turned back, cupping my bandaged face in both hands. "I won't shout, I won't shout." She nodded desperately, tears falling into the hollow of my neck. "Lin Fan, we won." She pressed her face to my palm, greedily drawing what little warmth I had left. That old fox Chairman Zhao, I had someone smash his kneecaps. He was on his knees on the shattered glass in the banquet hall, his face covered in blood from kowtowing. I had his tendons in his hands and feet severed and tossed him into the abandoned chemical plant west of the city. And those secret operatives Bai you left behind, not one of them lives. For how they hurt you, I'll make them pay 100 times over. The Bai family is wiped out, the whole Zhongcheng is cleansed. No one will ever be able to threaten us again. You won't have to hide in the shadows or be that shameful ugly girl anymore. We can finally be together openly and proudly. She cried and laughed, babbling as she showed me her spoils like a little girl presenting a treasured find. "I bought the villa in the south of the city, and the yard is full of the Michelaya unanenses you like. When your wounds heal, we'll move in. You mustn't go anywhere after that. Stay by my side, and I'll support you for the rest of your life." I looked at her eyes glittering with tears and forced an ugly smile. I wanted to nod, wanted to tell her okay, that I wouldn't go anywhere. A piercing pain tore through my right shoulder, the poisonous residue rampaged wildly in my blood, and a metallic sweetness rose in my throat. I gritted my teeth and forced that black blood down. The door was flung open and Chief Physician Chen strode in with several specialists. Bai Susu jumped up abruptly and clung to Chen's white coat like a drowning person grasping a lifeline. "Director Chen, he's awake. He can talk to me. Is he out of danger? Please give him a full examination." Director Chen stared at the constantly alarming readings on the cardiac monitor, his face as heavy as iron. He lifted my eyelids and shone a flashlight into them. The beam diffused in my pupils. He sighed, slowly removed his stethoscope, and shook his head. "President Bai, prepare for the funeral arrangements." 5 words hit the ward like 5 thunderbolts. Bai Susu froze, the smile on her face instantaneously solidifying. "What did you say?" She stared at Director Chen, her voice trembling beyond recognition. The old injuries from the car accident, combined with this lethal toxin. Director Chen lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. The toxin has already triggered disseminated intravascular coagulation. The liver and kidneys are showing extensive necrosis, the lungs are fibrosing at an astonishing rate, and cardiac muscle cells are dying in large numbers. It's like a building whose load-bearing walls were all blown out at once. The collapse happens in an instant. The earlier awakening was only a brief rally. Even with our top medical team and the best equipment, we can at most sustain him for a few more hours. Bai Susu suddenly grabbed Director Chen by the collar and slammed him hard against the doorframe. "Nonsense!" She roared like a desperate lioness, hysterical. "My Bai group is worth hundreds of billions. I'll give you the whole Bai group. Replace his blood. Replace his heart. Do whatever it takes. Just save him." Her eyes were bloodshot, her nails raking bloody marks into Director Chen's neck. "Save him. You useless lot. I spent so much money on you and you can't even save one person. Do you believe I'll tear this hospital down?" Director Chen let her tear at him, his eyes reddening. "President Bai, I'm sorry. The toxin acted too fast. No miracle can save him. You should spend whatever time you can talking to him." Director Chen waved, led several nurses who were wiping their faces out of the ward, and gently closed the door. Only the sharp alarm of the machines remained in the ward. Bai Susu slid to the floor as if drained, hands over her face, letting out a beastly, despairing wail. "Why? Lord, why are you doing this to me? I suffered for 3 years, I risked my life, is this the result I get? She slammed her head against the marble floor with force, producing a dull thud, a spot of blood bloomed on her forehead. Susu. I shouted her name with all my strength, ripped the oxygen mask from my face, panting heavily. Susu flinched, suddenly scrambling up and stumbling back to the bedside. I'm here. I'm here. She wiped her tears haphazardly and pressed both hands hard on my shoulders. Lin Fan, don't listen to his nonsense that quack knows nothing. I'll take you abroad, we'll go to America, to Switzerland. I'll charter a plane, we'll leave now. 3 years ago you stole me out of the morgue, you used your body heat in a 10-degree below basement to keep me alive. Today it's my turn to save you. I have money now, Lin Fan, I have so much money, I'll buy the best special medicine in the world. She babbled incoherently about the future, yet her tears, like beads with snapped threads, pelted my patient gown. I looked at her, my vision growing ever more blurred, the sounds at my ear beginning to wax and wane. Time had come. I bit through my tongue, using that piercing pain to force myself awake. With my left hand I moved little by little, finally covering the back of her trembling hand. No, it's fine. I gasped, each word draining the last of my strength. Susu, I'm not leaving. Snow began to fall outside the window. The familiar snow, exactly like that night in the basement 3 years ago. I turned my head and watched the flurries outside. Susu, it's snowing. She followed my gaze, biting her lip hard until blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Yes, it's snowing. She fought back a sob. When the snow stops, I'll push you out to see it, we'll go to the riverside, watch the fireworks. I shook my head and let my gaze fall back onto her face. This face I had looked at for 3 years, guarded for 3 years. No matter how I looked I could never get enough. The pain receded like a tide, replaced by an immeasurable cold. I felt my life slipping away like sand through an hourglass, frantically flowing through my fingers. The images on my retinas began to fade, turning from color to black and white. Susu, come here. I called her softly. She bent over and pressed her head against my chest, listening to my heartbeat grow fainter. Summoning the last of my strength, I raised my uninjured left hand and gently wiped the tears from the corner of her eye with my fingertip. Don't cry. You look so beautiful in that black suit, like a true queen. She gripped my wrist hard, her nails digging into my flesh. I don't want to be a queen. I only want you. Lin Fan, you still owe me, you haven't paid me back. You mustn't die. If you dare die, I'll haunt you even as a ghost. She brought up the words I had spoken to her in the basement 3 years ago, trying to use them to keep me with her. I laughed, the tremor in my chest tugging at the wound. My body grew lighter, like a feather about to be blown away by the wind. Miss, I reverted to the way I had addressed her 3 years ago. She jerked her head up and looked at me in stunned bewilderment. These past 3 years I've been running so tired, hiding in the shadows watching you shine. Now the road is clear, and no one dares bully you anymore. I looked into her eyes, where my scarred face was reflected. This clumsy driver of yours has finally delivered his miss safely to the finish. The heart monitor's rate grew slower and slower. Susu hugged me like a mad woman, burying her face deep in the hollow of my neck. No end. Lin Fan, no end. You promised you'd always stay with me. I love you, Lin Fan. I love you, do you hear? I love you. I heard it, the I love you that came 3 years late. How beautiful it sounded. I wanted to tell her I loved her too, loved her to my bones, loved her so much I could give up my life. I opened my mouth but no sound came out. Darkness surged like a tide, completely swallowing my sight. My hand, held aloft, lost all strength and fell heavily. The ECG monitor drew a glaring flat line. A long, piercing alarm shattered the New Year's Eve silence. The world fell completely silent. My soul hovered in midair, watching the woman in the ward cry until she fainted, watching the doctors and nurses rush in, watching the white sheet pulled over my head, watching the heavy snow bury the entire Jiang City. 5 years later, on the Jiang City Cross River Bridge, the river wind was still bone-piercing, and brilliant New Year's fireworks bloomed in the distant night sky. Susu stood alone in the snow wearing black. She had cut her hair even shorter, her gaze cold and sharp as a blade. Whenever the business circles of Jiang City mentioned her name, everyone shuddered. With an iron fist she absorbed all the city's underworld forces and propelled the Bai group to an unprecedented peak. She possessed everything that made people look up to her: wealth, power, status. She stood at the very top of the pyramid, the undisputed queen of the city. Snowflakes landed on her shoulders. She extended a hand clad in black velvet gloves and caught a flake, watching it melt in her palm. A faded red cord was tied around her wrist, and from it hung a brass key stained with blood. It was the stake he had traded his life for 3 years ago. Now it was her only reason to keep living. A black armored Maybach idled by the roadside. Bodyguards held black umbrellas and stood respectfully 3 meters away, not daring to come any closer. Mr. Bai, the winds picked up. We should head back, the bodyguard reminded in a low voice. Susu didn't turn around. She watched the churning river in silence, tears falling soundlessly onto the snow, burning small pits into it. Lin Fan, it's snowing, she murmured, her words were scattered by the river wind. You said the foolish driver brought me to the destination. You're not here, what does all this world's splendor mean as an endpoint? She had won the world, yet was forever trapped on that New Year's Eve at -15 degrees. The end.